We know that Greg Gutfeld is miserable, but it might be a thing that's just attributed to right-wing Gregs. Maybe they're just all miserable. You know what I mean? Maybe if your name is Greg and you consider yourself a conservative, that's just a recipe for misery. Because Greg Kelly is miserable, as we've noted before, and his newest video, I have a feeling, is going to be one of the most miserable experiences of his life. Literally the name of this video is, and this is on Newsmax's own channel, is I read Obama's book so you don't have to, Greg Kelly. Now, do I really think he read it? We'll see after because I don't necessarily buy it right off the front. Audiobook, maybe. But sit down and read it page for page. Greg Kelly's spending his afternoons and evenings going through Obama's book, but like reading it, or having staff go, check this page out. Like, this is, yeah. So we'll see. I'm just curious because we've all seen Greg at his darndest. I'm just curious how he managed to make it through it.
But this guy is more...
Hold on, wait.
Sorry, but this guy is more important and probably just as powerful as he ever was. Barack...
Sorry. He looks happy. By the way, can I show you guys something real quick? Talk amongst yourselves. I have to go get something. This is just to irritate Greg. It'll take a second. Hi, my love. I'm just grabbing something, if you don't mind. I just got to grab something for my live stream to show people. Love you. Are you having fun? All right, good.
Truly, they do say that these days.
Huh?
Truly, they do say that these days.
Uh-huh. They do? Yeah, thanks. They full on ham? Yes, cool. All right. And that means being silly? Being ridiculous?
No, basically, like, I'm gonna go full force.
Go for it. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. So they think ham it up means that. So I'm just doing this to irritate. So I just got a lesson. I was hoping you guys could hear it, but my son was giving me a lesson on full on ham as a phrase. So it's great. And by the way, for those of you that don't know, hamming it up, which of course means being funny or being ridiculously silly and selling your comedy, on a Jerry Lewis level, or on a, like the Ace Ventura character, the Dumb and Dumber world, that kind of comedy is considered hamming it up. Calling a comedian a ham actually comes from vaudeville, from minstrel shows, when they would wear all this makeup, and and clowns would also do it. They had that problem as well. So it's not just minstrel shows, but minstrels and clowns would both use ham fat to get their makeup off. And so they were called ham fat men. And then it's just shortened down to ham after a while. Yes, but God bless you. This is just I have one of these. He looks nearly as happy right there. This is my Obama head bust that I have, that it's lovely. And I bought it when I was in D.C. And during the Obama presidency. It was really cool. And I have that in my home. It goes right next to my Buck Stops Here Truman desk plate that I got at the Truman Museum. And I also have a ginormous Obama portrait that I'll show you guys sometimes. Again, just mainly as like a warning for people who enter the house. Yes, I did pay for it. I own it. It is mine, and you can't have it. So yeah, there you go.
Barack Obama.
Oh, that's who he is. I was mixed up for a second. I was like, okay.
Things I've learned about him. Number one, he is running the country.
But he also is, he was controlled by Hillary's people. And now he's running the country through Biden with Hillary's people. We've been through this, but.
Number two, he has disdain for white people as
a
group. And all.
As a group. Now, is it all white people or just certain groups of white people, like the Bee Gees or something?
Also, he's still struggling after all of these years with his own racial identity.
So he hates half of himself. Is that the group?
A lot of this.
So are his white grandparents and his white mom in the group he hates? Is that the struggling part?
Is in his book, his latest, about himself, of course.
his latest about himself, of course.
Promised land, and it's all there. He has wondered, am I black enough? Others in the black community have wondered about him.
See, it's weird that he struggles with this as someone who's in the unique position of being a mixed race president, seen as the first black president, when he's in reality, I guess, the argument, the second mixed race, depending on your definition of it. Like at a certain point when we wash it out, isn't everybody a little bit mixed race after a while, depending on which races we're talking about? How much race is a race? But so Greg is confused that in a completely frank book written by a man who's half black and half white, that was the first black president, that he might deal with the issues around what our society perceives around those issues, and that he might, I don't know, in his own heart and soul and in his own mind, contemplate those ideas on the regular.
Is he black enough? It's in the book.
Unbelievable. He wrote it down. Did he type it up? Did someone? What?
Everyone, take a look.
Obama's an outsider. He's backed by white folks. He's a Harvard elitist. And that name, is he even black? He seems to be quoting.
Obama's an outsider. He's backed by white folks. He's a Harvard elitist. And that name, is he even black? These are questions he got in the community all the time.
Right. So he's not supposed to talk about questions people actually asked him in a frank and open discussion about his thought process. Let me, please show me like the response where he went, damn straight I'm fucking black. And he like went full on ham to sell it. Why, what is this?
Moving on. Those voices within the
Yeah, and CSL, I appreciate you chiming in on this conversation, and it is exactly this is the frank part of the conversation. This is why you read the book about somebody of his extraordinary nature who came from where he came from and became president of the United States. And if you're dealing with the same issues, you might go, holy shit, a guy who's dealing with the same issues and questions and ideas that I deal with became president of the United States. Maybe there's hope for me, even if they're not exactly the same issues. But carrying that weight with him and being accepted and not accepted and all those issues that everybody deals with in their own form, he dealt with it in his own life and became president. Twice, unlike Trump.
within the black community arguing.
Those voices within the black community arguing that I wasn't ready or I was too radical or I was too mainstream or not quite black enough. Why are you highlighting that shit? Why is this a gotcha? He's relating what people said.
That I wasn't ready, or I was too radical, or too mainstream, or not quite black enough. Of course, he had a white mother, and for some in that community, he was viewed with suspicion.
Suspicion. Suspicion was the word. Really? They thought he was a black Churian candidate? He was a white Churian candidate? Is that what's happening?
When he ran for office, this came up back in the 90s, and when he tried again for Congress in the year 2000. Now, when we first started noticing him across the country on the national stage, nobody really knew about this stuff. Everybody.
Yeah, nobody knew he was half anything. Nobody didn't. When we first were introduced, we didn't know his internal struggles about his upbringing like we do most humans. What are you talking about? Why would we?
They just fell in love with the guy because.
Thank you, Andrea.
As well.
Putting that there.
He was a dynamic man, great speaker.
Still is.
And
yeah, I have to say something. There's some distinction between these and the Trump rallies that are kind of interesting. I don't know quite what it is. I can't put my thumb on it. Oh, the kind of beauty and spontaneity of it.
While it seemed like he was not afraid to say things that a lot of people knew, but were afraid to say.
What? Yeah. So Obama's remember when he was like Archie Bunker?
Especially about the status of the black family and what was happening in that community.
Yeah, he still does. It's still a concern. You're going to play the clip? Too many black
Too many fathers are MIA. Too many fathers are AWOL. You and I know this is true everywhere, but nowhere is it more true than in the African American community. We know the statistics that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime. They're 9 times more likely to drop out.
Hold on one second. Out of total respect for my president. Cam, love you. Thanks.
Of school. 20 times more likely to end up in prison.
This was powerful stuff.
And where is he now? Why won't he still? Yeah.
And very few of any race willing to say this out loud.
Of any race, yes. Where are the Chinese people who are talking about the lack of fathers in black neighborhoods?
But he got nailed for it, primarily from the left and from very prominent black politicians like Jesse Jackson.
And
lots of headlines. Again, whenever he talked in really candid, forthright ways about what was happening in the black community, he got beat. How the Obama administration...
No, he didn't. He actually became president again.
Administration talks to black America. Folks did not like this on the left. Obama pressed on how he talks to the black community. Barack Obama...
Yeah, I don't... And again, you're celebrating this now, Greg, and I'm very confused as to why you weren't supportive of him at the time. If you support this tough talk and you think this is legit, then and you're like, he was being attacked by all the wrong people about this, then why'd you give him so much shit and call him a psycho radical lefty Marxist, which is all nonsense as well at the time and ongoing? Why isn't this part of his life and his speeches and his frank talk about these kind of things and trying to heal and find solutions for those circumstances, why is that not a regular part of how you describe the man? Now, I'm going to guess that it's because you didn't give a shit until you couldn't talk about Biden because his stuff is too popular on the material grounds and he's white, so you can't scare your viewers. See, by going after the Obama-Biden policies, when they're furthered by the Biden administration, because they work together very closely and they shared ideas and there was a lot going on there, that by the Biden administration going, Barack Obama had a lot of great ideas. We're just carrying those forward. I've got some ideas of my own that we talked about then that we didn't have a chance to do and that are becoming crucial now. We'll move those forward. The problem with that is that those ideas are very popular. And now that Biden is the one at the top of the ticket pushing these things, the only 2 ways that Greg Kelly can scare the Newsmax viewers is to say that Obama's really the person behind these things. So they must not be, you can't trust these things because this black dude is the one who's behind them, not Biden, who you keep forgetting to hate. And the other option, of course, is that, it's not Obama pulling the strings. It's Kamala Harris is really running shit. Thank you, Robin. That's exactly what is happening here. The reason Greg Kelly has to go to the Obama well about this is because his own viewers don't fear these programs when they come from Biden. 60% of Republicans are supporting, most of the things put forward by the Biden administration specifically. Addendums that get added in the House by the more radical factions in the Democrats, those are the things that get shot down or get pushed around Fox News, pushed around Newsmax as this is what they're really going after, instead of them being amendments added by the Progressive Caucus or something like that are 8% of the overall bill, and many of them get stripped out along the way anyways, that they go, that's what the Biden administration is really trying to do, is that little piece right there. The rest of it is just a cloak for the whole thing. And that's the way they sell fear of those things. But when it comes from Biden, it's not hitting the way they want. It's not selling to their people. So they have to drag that Obama's really behind it. So there must be something else going on. And Kamala Harris is really running things.
Obama talks down to black people again. So guess what? This all had an effect on him.
And by the way, I'm sure this is officially the first time that Greg Kelly has taken an article from African Globe seriously. This is now, by the way, so as journalists and online journalists go, and I don't quite know what classification Newsmax falls in as this kind of digital hell that they're in as a channel, but as they go, you have to. I believe that I think we'll borrow the phrase "past being prologue." I think is what you said, Greg, a couple days ago. That once you cite a source as a source of value, you go, this article backs me up. Then that overall source that it came from has to have some sort of legitimacy. So it's the thing that falls apart whenever these people go after the Washington Post or the New York Times. Then the New York Times or the Washington Post write something that supports their position, and then all of a sudden they like the New York Times and they like the Washington Post, right? Greg Kelly does this shit all the time. So the important thing is that we all need to know that Greg Kelly reads African Globe, and I think that's got to be progress. But from now on, anything that African Globe writes has a Greg Kelly approves checkmark by it until he doesn't.
And he didn't go there. And when he did go there, well, he wasn't this unifier. He wasn't someone who was saying things that couldn't be said by others or wouldn't be said. He just adopted whatever the far left was saying, and he repeated it from the White House.
You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon.
Yeah, they hang on this one a lot. And he's absolutely right. It's one of the scariest things that for a man in his position to look at, that this kid who was part of this nationwide scandal and story and this heartbreak about it, that a lot of people were thinking that it looked familiar in that regard. And that doesn't mean that it could have been anybody. There's a bunch of black kids don't look anything like him. But this one in particular, you're like, yeah, I can see that. I can see how you would feel that. You know, it's kind of like if Hank Kuhneman heard about Jesse Waters being, harmed by Zimmerman, and then I looked at him and Lord Jesus, praise Jesus, he could be me 15 years ago.
I think it's fair to say, number one, any of us would be pretty angry. Number two, that the Cambridge police acted stupidly in arresting somebody when there was already proof that they were in their own home. In too many.
Yeah. By the way, yes. Did he say acted criminally? No. Stupidly is the mitigatory phrase that a leader would use in that circumstance.
Many communities around the country.
And by the way, let's understand how this works in what Greg Kelly's doing. They do this is the clip. This kind of montage has been played on a lot of right-wing channels, and they always do them almost in the exact same order. The difference between saying the Cambridge police acted stupidly is saying, instead of saying the police. So you're not talking about police in general. You're not generalizing about this. You're talking about a very specific, narrow point. And then saying that they did something stupid, which was apparently different than ignorant, because ignorant means you don't know. Stupid means you knew and you did the wrong thing anyways, which is stupid. Whether it was criminal, whether it was maliciously done is another conversation entirely. The president doesn't go there. He says stupidly. The rest of the country was actually speaking way further. I don't know why this is cribbing from the left.
A gulf of mistrust exists between local residents and law enforcement.
Yes, this is true.
Too many young men of color
Dude yells right.
feel targeted by law enforcement. Guilty of walking while black or driving while black, judged by stereotypes that fuel fear and resentment and hopelessness.
Yes, that's also, again, this is like the Biden clip we were watching that the Five played and that Don Jr. played, is that he starts off with too many young black males feel this. Is there a material guarantee that in all these circumstances that it's a reality? No. But one of the things about the messaging of it and the experience of it is that a lot of them feel this way, and therefore this leads to an overall distrust. And so somewhere between the distrust and the genuine circumstances and misunderstandings or habitual criminals crying foul and that kind of stuff, all in there is this mix of a solution around that feeling, where you need to build trust between the community and law enforcement. That's why they started the cops program. That's what happened during the Obama administration. Trump scuttled the cops program almost immediately, within a year. And that program, more than likely, would have protected George Floyd's life. And all the property damage and looting and rioting that they, deride and freak out over would have been avoided, because they would have simply kept a program in place that would have broomed the likes of Chauvin from a lot of local police forces, or given them an opportunity to solve those issues. So,
this was the style of his rhetoric. It was not what he was saying back in 2008. It's what the far
left part, his responsibility as president was to build that trust. It isn't either or. Both of those things are true. He didn't shy away from the fact that fatherlessness was a problem in the black community, but it also was aligned with the other things that he was saying about distrust in the community and people and the school to prison pipeline and having to deal with that. And one of the reasons why there's a lot of fatherless homes, you can have an outreach to fathers that leave and bring them back, or you can try to teach young men as they're coming up to not leave when they have a child. But the one thing that's all malleable and societal, and that has nothing to do with government action in a lot of ways. But if you're putting a bunch of them in prison for just having weed, for example, for lengths of time that remove them from the household during crucial years while their child is being developed, and somebody else steps in while you're gone, or you're in prison for 3 years or 5 years for personal amounts of drugs in these states where you weren't involved in other crimes, that creates the problem and then leads to that ever-growing distrust. It's a societal problem. It requires societal practice to fix it. And so what he's saying there isn't in contrast to what he said on the campaign trail. It was complementary to it, and the holistic approach necessary to deal with a problem as big as it is. And again, I don't suspect that Greg Kelly would ever be able to intellectually grasp this, because he is a small-minded fool, and I don't know what this little hand gesture is trying to tell us. Maybe he's peaking the meter on his upset.
Far left wanted to hear. They didn't want.
What did the far left want to hear? The far left wants to hear abolish prisons. The far left doesn't want you to build trust between young black men and the police department. They want to defund and get rid of the police wholly because they were slave catchers originally. That's what the far left wants. The 3% of people who are yelling that make 30% of the noise about it. They don't want to build trust between these things and because think about what he's saying. He wants these young men to feel like they can trust the police. That's the goal. And that the feeling that they're being pulled over or whatever, walking while black, driving while black, any of those kind of things, that if you can solve those issues where they feel that way, then that trust will grow. And the only people causing that distrust are these rogue bad actor cops that because the entire structure of policing often is guarded by the blue wall, because if they don't trust this, if one guy is found to be corrupt, and that's why corruption goes on in a lot of ways, in a lot of law enforcement over the years, is because they cover it up, not because the rest of the cops are bad, but because it makes them look bad, and then people don't call the cops and more people die, and there's all this societal role from it. It's not, I mean, again, this is the level of thinking required for a very complex problem that Greg Kelly is incapable of processing.
Didn't want these conservative values or a conservative approach. So he only went so far when he was in the White House on race issues.
And why are you doing the Trump fingers?
But now that he's out of the
there's a lot of paralleling with what he's trying to do. I mean, it's like I don't know if it's a puppet show or you were a cheerleader.
White House, and we have an empty shell of a man in the White House.
Oh, an empty shell of a man in the White House, apparently, who's
Joe Biden.
Which is, again, this is why they're selling this idea. And this is from the vice presidential, from the debate when he said, I want to talk to you afterwards, and he did. Remember that when he hung around after the debate with, I can't remember if this was the Trump one or, yes, it was, where he was like, let me explain that to you further after we're done, or the town hall.
Who is very, very controllable. Well, Barack Obama can now get...
By the way, he's listening to someone up in the stands. They're slowing the footage down to make him look like he's gazing off into nothingness.
All kinds of things done. And I'm sorry, but when he's...
And there he's talking, and they're actually like playing it on a loop.
Said this to Stephen Colbert, I don't think it was a joke. I think he might have been bragging about the arrangement.
If I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, that's what he's talking about, the fact that there's so much weight on him being a great orator and all this kind of stuff. But obviously this means this is a gotcha. This means he's part of the New World Order.
All right, so Barack Obama was president for 8 years, and during those 8 years, I don't remember us talking much about slavery. Do you? Now it's all...
Well, you certainly didn't.
That anyone really talks about. Slavery and reparations. Well...
Really? Is that all we're talking about? Because I've just been watching a bunch of videos about how climate change is no big deal, and Don Jr. Thing like the Chinese and the Russians are the primary threat. We're not talking about that. And you mean... And by the way, is this the best photograph you could find?
Even Barack Obama's talking about it. And
well, why would he in a book about his life?
And, well, he mentioned this to Bruce Springsteen on a podcast.
So if you ask me, theoretically, are reparations justified? The answer is yes. What I saw during my presidency...
Oh, why'd you cut that part out? Why'd you cut from there?
Was that the politics of white resistance and resentment, the talk of...
Why'd you cut? What are you slicing up there, Greg?
Welfare queens and the talk of the undeserving poor and the backlash against affirmative action. All that made the prospect of actually proposing any kind of coherent, meaningful reparations program struck me as politically not only a non-starter, but potentially counterproductive.
Okay. Sounds like a person thinking very seriously about the issue. But I'm sure, yeah, I mean, I'm certain, guys, I'm sure that when Greg Kelly's producer, whoever, the intern, the unpaid intern that they have from, Charlie Kirk's entourage that does the editing on Newsmax, I'm sure the sentences they cut out, don't, help convey a point of view that doesn't exist, I'm sure.
All right, potentially counterproductive. Why?
Yeah, potentially counterproductive. It might have a backlash because of, for example, the number of immigrants that entered the country after slavery and after the Civil War that would see their taxes going to a group of people in the country that they didn't participate in the slavery of, and of course Northerners who fought against the Civil War, who paid in blood with their ancestors, their relatives, or whatever during the Civil War to fight to end slavery, and the mixture of those people being a little pissed off that there was a giant paycheck for a group of people that weren't even alive then, and that part of it gets very murky, and so that's what he means by counterproductive. That you get a lot of pushback from the immigrant community and people who've come here over the years, because there's no way to tax the old South. There's no way to get money. The reparations money isn't going to come from the red states. As a matter of fact, those red states that would have fought for the Confederacy, that should be the ones paying for that, to make up for that, are the ones still receiving more federal tax dollars anyways. So I mean, that's the background. I mean, there's the cliff notes of it, but hence, part of the argument. But Greg wants us
white resentment, a white backlash, all those nasty things about white people just weren't ready to talk about reparations. But now that he's out of power, or actually in power in a weird
way, because he's running Joe Biden, because Joe Biden's an empty shell, and these are the furtherance of them. But of course, we know that Hillary's people ran Obama's so weird
way.
Yeah. I do kind of need hello, just so you know, this is ridiculousness that by the way, these issues are incredibly serious and deserve serious takes. I refuse to give serious takes fully on a video like this because it is inserious and Greg Kelly is a clown. So I will be treating it with a level of insincerity and grotesque mockery that is not in line with how seriously I actually take the issues, just for the record.
Everyone's talking about reparations, and he got Joe Biden to get on board. Biden back.
Is that how he did it? Or did Biden actually come to it on his own? Oh, right, empty shell. I forgot, or whatever. He's going to study it. All right.
Studying reparations as Congress considers a bill. This is radically different from the guy Barack Obama told us he was back when we first met him.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America. There is not a black America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America. There's the United States of America.
Right. Yeah. So when in this argument, just so I can break this down for Greg Kelly, who is a simple-minded buffoon, that let's say you've got white and Asian, Latino and black, and everybody's in the United States of America. And one group has been let down by that promise for a good deal of time through material actions by both the federal and state governments and other groups of people, that if to make the United States more united, you can bring those folks into the fold by fixing some of the gaps. Hence, why we've done things like affirmative action and the rest of those kind of things. That ending that gap brings everybody together, and then we're all swimming in the same stream. This is so easy.
That was a long time ago, huh? A long time ago indeed.
Yeah, but that's the same time you were pointing out that he was talking about black fatherhood as a distinct aspect of humanity. Honestly, Greg, were you hit in the head as a child? Is there a gap between your lobes?
Indeed. Interesting that guy is now pushing reparations, and this guy is
he pushing reparations? Because it didn't sound like he was pushing it. He was saying it's on a is it justified? Yeah. Is it practicable? Could you do it? Probably not. Not to everyone's satisfaction, and it would cause more dissatisfaction than it would actually help. There's other ways to go about it. That's what you find out when you're in office. But we'll see. Maybe he's got a clip where he's like, we need him now.
Is actually going to make it happen in his dreams, perhaps, but it looks like it could actually come true.
What?
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
We really are going backwards, aren't we?
By the way, if Greg Kelly was a Democrat, he would he would have liked that statement. So just for the record.
Look, here's the thing about race.
They play this a bunch of times. Oh wait, Greg's going to tell us about race, guys. Hold on. Finally, I know it's a complex issue with a lot of heart and soul tied into it, but Greg will break it down.
My opinion.
Okay, this is the thing about race. In Greg's opinion,
doesn't bring people together.
Race doesn't bring people together.
Even of the same race, okay?
What?
It's not a unifying force.
Sorry, wait, one second there, if I may, champ. You what now? I don't know why this isn't jumping back. My keyboard seems to be asleep.
People are very, very different. Now, Barack Obama tried to...
Yes. Racially, people are not homogenous. Yes, there are Candace Owens in the world. And everything Candace Owens says isn't bad, or she wouldn't even be worth dealing with at all. So she has to say like this much smart shit, and as filler for the and then the rest of what she says is awful. And that's how your network operates. That's how a lot of folks operate. That doesn't mean that people can't understand racial differences and get along in spite of or because of them.
To bond with some people of color this past weekend, a group in Chicago that he pays some attention to over the years.
Yeah, just do these guys look engaged?
Take a look at this. Do you think they have a common bond of any type whatsoever?
When we came here, three of the guys here, I shared with them was, and I think this surprised some of the violence and drugs and some of the issues that I was going through.
What is the edit going on here, Newsmax?
We're similar, and I think that, and I think that, one of the things we all, boys and young
What the fuck is he editing here?
men of color, many of whom grow up without fathers, don't have as many resources.
Did he just? They just said the. Did you have to cut him in the middle of the sentence where many of them grow up without fathers? Like he literally went back.
Around them, it becomes that much more critical. These are the kinds of pressures I'm dealing with. That's something that I went through also. I'm struggling with this too. This is something I'm confused about.
Yeah, you know what, Greg? I'm with you. I don't understand what the fuck he was talking about because you were cutting at every conjunction. Because you literally couldn't let one whole sentence go or it would undermine your entire fucking argument. Imagine being that desperate to make it look like Obama has no say in this conversation, no legitimate feelings about it, or that he's not participating in it, and that Greg Kelly wants to supersede Barack Obama's racial experience as a mixed race man. Greg Kelly wants not only to interrupt that conversation and insert himself into it, but chop up this conversation so fucking much that it can't make sense because it would undermine what he's saying. Good Lord.
We compressed that. He went on and on.
Oh, did he? He went on and on in a roundtable discussion that CNN put on about him talking to young black men in Chicago about the violence that's been going on there, trying to help, trying to find a solution. He went on. Did he go on and on? Did he go on and on?
And on for about 4 minutes, talking about him.
4 minutes? How dare he?
Himself, saying not too much and not connected.
Oh yeah? If he didn't say much at all, play the 4 minutes. What are you, long on your show, Greg?
With anybody in that room. I wish.
Really? I'm sorry, Greg. You couldn't feel the bond between the black men in that room and the former president because you have a special laser beam in your head? What? Honest to God.
I wish he had mentioned.
This is kind of fucking amazing. Like, this is so, like, kind of lost and petty. Yeah.
Faith, because I really think that might have been something that could have brought people together. But our race just isn't enough. It doesn't do it. For instance, George Will. If George Will and I ever met, I don't think we would bond over much. He happens to be white and I'm white, but I think that is the last. We don't have anything else in common. I mean,
you're both conservatives.
George Will and I are never going to.
You both. I think he voted for Trump the first time.
To be friends.
Yeah, you both went to the same kind of schools. You dress almost identically. Your material experience in life is almost identical. I guarantee that, besides wearing glasses, which maybe you do, Greg, you have your lives almost entirely overlap.
That's that. And I can live with that. Hey, how about Machine Gun Kelly, that rap guy? What am I going to talk about with music? I like Southern rock, 38 Special, and the late Charlie Daniels Band. Do you think he's...
Yeah. I mean, he would argue that he's probably, I mean, he's younger than you by a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think you'd look fabulous in a pearl necklace, Greg.
He's going to be into that? No. Are we going to start
That's an age thing, dipshit.
talking about our white skin? No.
No. But one of the things is, I bet if one of you says I'm Irish and the other one goes, oh, that's interesting. My family's German Hungarian. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, they came over. They were immigrants and blah, blah, blah. Like, of course, there's a lot of overlay in the conversation. You just think that the conversations that other people have are angry. So, like, you think that when black people talk about skin color amongst themselves, that it's based on a unifying oppression scheme that you somehow have in your head for how they converse about it. You have a lot of the same conversations. This is the one thing we share more, is Greg Sugarlow.
It doesn't work that way, and too often that's the way the liberal media thinks it should. But
The fuck are you talking about? Is it because Machine Gun Kelly has weird hair, and so you're like, Obama's talking to these guys with dreads, and therefore that's the overlay and the age difference? Is that why you picked the dude? Is that what we think? All right.
But it doesn't. Does that make...
MG Daniel, what the fuck is his point? I don't know. I swear to God. We're almost, we've got like 10 seconds left in this clip. I have no idea what the fuck he's talking about. I don't even know what his argument is. It's somewhere between Obama's now for reparations and he wasn't before, and now he used to be a race realist and now he isn't, and yet they cut up the conversation, which seemed to include all of those things all at the same time because he was going a bit long, and ultimately Obama's just saying whatever the left wants him to say because he's really a puppet for the left, even no matter what he said before, and yet Biden is now a puppet for Obama to say the things that the far left wants to say. Why the fuck would they bother? This is so weird.
That makes sense? I hope so. I know it's a
What if I, a white guy, had dreads? Oh my God, right, exactly.
little bit out there.
You just watched Newsmax.
It's white guys with dreads is cultural appropriation from Vikings. Just saying. I'm amazed. Like, we go through some of Greg Kelly's stuff, and I had a lot of hope for this one. I read Obama's book, so you don't have to. Greg Kelly. He had two clips from it. Two phrases from it, all Obama quoting other people, right? These were the where is he? All the quotes were from, like, where Obama was talking about how other people spoke to him about growing up in the country he grew up in and how he became president and what that meant, dealing with the conversation about race as the first black president. And all of this, these are things that the only things he shows from the book that he supposedly read, so you didn't have to, were quotes from the book that, let's see, this one, there you go. Yeah. And then this one. Yeah. Were quotes from the book about what other people said about him. And then the rest of it was him playing clips of Obama saying things while he was president, and then saying that, Biden's a husk and he's really running things. And why are we talking about slavery? And when they had this was a long ass podcast. Obama speaks slowly. He's a very laid back speaker. When he's not giving a speech, there is a lot of time between his words. And he's fine with taking his time on those things. And there was tons of stuff they talked about in this. And why is it that this experience of this conversation, by the way, I'll tell you why. It was because the phrase white resentment, this actual phrase, the phrases that they're quoting about white resistance and resentment is what they were looking for. It's like they basically did like a word scan of it just so they could put it in. And then, of course, this led to him backing a study as Congress considers a bill is an example of the left using Obama as a puppet to puppet Biden to make him do stuff that they want him to do. I like, the reach is so amazing. I'm literally, like, he's giving Tucker Carlson a run for his money in the rambling gibberish structure Yes, Lizardvid. Obama thinks before he speaks, and often when he's asked a question, will consider what the other person is saying and how it will be heard by another human being, because that is the crucial part of speaking as a leader. That a lot of times, and you'll see this with Biden as well, that when he speaks about an issue, unlike Trump, who was saying automatically what Greg Kelly wanted to hear and excluding millions of other people intentionally, the president of the United States, who intends to unite the United States, will speak to a group that they are referencing with as little exclusion of the other group as possible. So you don't go, if, like a guy like Zimmerman could have shot me, and those people have to be, that would be the exclusionary version, as opposed to saying, if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. And that's, it's hard not to consider this as I'm looking at this. It's I'm dealing with the reality of that circumstance, but at the same time, we let the law play out the way it does, and that's very important in a country like ours. And that's the conversation that as it happened. But it requires depth of thought. That's why on this show, we don't fear complexity. Now, I know complexity is what keeps Greg Kelly up at night, not because he cares or he worries about it, but because it requires that he cut out every third word of someone speaking or use slow motion footage of Joe Biden in an attempt to make them look disengaged or shape their conversation in a way that that will fit the narrative that he's selling. So you play this clip over and over as he's listening to someone or speaking to someone who's up in the stands as an idea that he's just kind of wandering. He must be wandering around the stage. And you play it in slow motion so it makes it look it sells your point of view, right? So Greg Kelly, our angry simpleton that, Newsmax, I mean, you got a heavyweight there, kids. I hope you run with Greg Kelly for a long time. Whatever you're paying him, I think you should double it because of inflation, He should get at least, I would say, minimum wage. I mean, it's the only thing that's right. I know he lives off the tips that they get at the Newsmax YouTube site. Don't forget to super chat, folks. Support and like our show. Just saying. More videos like this. That's how it happens. You bring the show to everyone. No pressure.